Rotary Club of Louisville. I'm Tony Kemper, head of the DePaul School and president of our club. Please welcome Tracy Holliday, past director of this club, the longtime executive director of Cabbage Patch Settlement House, who will lead us in today's invocation. Tracy.
That is the fuel in our engine for our service. Service above self, our motto, is made possible through contributions to our charitable Rotary Fund. And when all of us contribute to that, it's got a wonderful force multiplier where we can draw down district funds to match that and extend our work locally and globally. I, as Tony said, chair the Rotary Fund this year, and Tony Coffey chairs the Rotary Investment Committee, which is made up, if you'll go forward, of some wonderful talent from our club that ensures that there is really good stewardship of the resources that have been contributed. So Tony's going to give you a little quick snapshot on how we're doing.
Thank you, Alice. I get to follow two of the best ex-presidents that we ever had. And I would say one of the best Rotary Fund Board chairs in Alice. Their names aren't up there, but I would like to just recognize the Rotary Fund Board too. They give great guidance to the investment committee, and they are just extremely helpful and responsible to the many requests that we give them to change our investments. Everybody wants to talk about performance when you're in the midst of a bull market. So that's a great thing. We will talk about performance. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. But first, I want to talk some about risk management. Your Rotary Fund is managed as an endowment and for perpetuity. So one of the worst things you'd want to do is to have great big losses. We are guided by an investment policy that sets allocation ranges on the different asset classes that we can own. You can see the allocation that we had in place as of September 30th. We've been underweighting fixed income and somewhat overweighting the various equity categories lately. If you look at the cash outstanding and the cash equivalents, only about 1.4% of that's actually in a money market fund. The rest of it's embedded in our mutual funds. To talk some about the performance, there's really just two ways that we can add value. And one is by the asset allocation, and second is by picking superior mutual funds. We do not own individual equity securities. By policy, we can only own money market funds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds. The only individual securities that we can own are U.S. Treasury securities. We've had a great run here relatively on both absolute and relative performance. Relatively, we do have our performance tracked to indexes. Our custodian manages that, and it's a 60-40 type equity fixed blend. It's a pretty good approximation toward the midpoints of our policy. We have exceeded the benchmarks by 3% year to date and by almost 4% for the last 12 months, and we're now ahead for the last 3 and 5 years. If you look at the value of the fund, you can see at the top, it gives away the ending of it, about where we are. But February of 2006, we had 2,058,000. Late in 2016, that had grown to a little over 2.3 million. As of September 30th, we were up to 2,532,000. We're paying out about 4.5% to the good works of Rotary every year. So in that 19-month period, we were up 473,000 while paying out about 150,000. So again, so much of the absolute performance is due to the good market. We don't want to take credit for that. We don't want to get blamed for whenever the market goes down, because that will happen again sometime too. But I think you can be pleased with what your fund is doing, the controls in place, and particularly with the good works that we're doing. Thank you.
As our August announcer of the month, right? And she wowed us in that capacity. And she will introduce our new member. Barbara, of course, is one of the best current councilwomen this club has ever had. Barbara?
Thank you, President Tony, and fellow Rotarians, honored guest and esteemed guest speaker, whom we're very excited to hear from. It is a great pleasure and honor to introduce a new member to Rotary, a longtime friend of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet John Howard Shaw Wu. Do you think I would introduce someone that didn't have 3 names also? John Howard Shaw Wu is a business and social entrepreneur. He's a native Texan and a proud Kentuckian. Yes, he is. Yellow Rose of Texas now would be appropriate to play. All right. John and his internationally renowned spouse, Dr. Shao Wu, are the proud parents of 3 dogs and a pet rabbit named Ripley. He is the founder and chief executive officer of G Mills. He is also the founder and executive director of G Foundation, which focuses on reducing poverty in Kentucky, poverty that is caused by hunger and homelessness, lack of a job, and lack of training. So thank you for doing that. He personally delivers, and a team of his deliver meals to seniors called G Meals on Wheels, and also a meal program to deliver meals to our veterans who need them. John Howard Shaw Wu is also the founder and executive director of the West Louisville Eco Hub Arts Community Incorporated. Could y'all have memorized that? He is focused on a unique arts culture community. I've not seen anything like this in America. They're taking vacant and abandoned properties and houses and converting them into arts eco-hubs, and we're focusing in West Louisville. He serves on many boards, the Botanical Gardens Board, the Louisville Community Action Partnership Board, BB&T Community Council, and many others. He loves tennis, travel, and he's a foodie. Please welcome John Howard Shaw Wu.
That's going to take us in. Welcome. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you. Barbara, thank you.
Yes,
sir. Barbara's the best when it comes to introducing new members. No doubt about that. What a lineup of outstanding and significant speakers we've enjoyed the first 4 months of this Rotary year. It's my pleasure to introduce Speakers Committee Co-Chair and Paul Harris Fellow Clint Scharf for an overview of our speakers and programs. Clint is Executive and Chief Operating Officer of the Lincoln Heritage Council of the Boy Scouts of America, and he's also one more recipient from the Rotary International of a Paul Harris Plus pin. Clint, congratulations.
Well, you know, a club full of bankers and accountants and investment brokers, they get a Boy Scout to talk about some numbers. But we'll try and roll through a little bit here about how our program committee is doing for you. And just bear with me as we work this. So we take weekly surveys, which we send out every week. And I want to thank the 40% of you that do that every week. I want to encourage the rest of you to take care of that. That information does get looked at. It's very important as we shape our program plans for the year. We applied a net promoter score kind of concept to that as we evaluated survey results, overall club meeting and speaker performance. And to kind of break that down for you, if you're not familiar with the Net Promoter Score, we look at the bottom 2/3 of that, and generally say people in the bottom 2/3 are generally dissatisfied with something. People kind of more in the middle are passively satisfied, and the people at the very top are what we call promoters. They're so happy they go back to work or go home and brag about the thing they've just done. And our goal is to turn every Rotary Club member into a promoter of Rotary. We want you to be so satisfied with your experience here, the fellowship and the program, that you go back and you brag about it to others. So that said, we'll take a look at the first 6 months of this year prior to the move to the Fraser, and we'll see that we had about 30% response rate on our weekly surveys. We appreciate that feedback. Overall feedback, if you look at our lowest scoring item here, was the catering service at our previous location. In fact, 80% of the time, club members were dissatisfied with the weekly catering service in our prior location. Topic's pretty good, speaker's pretty good, overall satisfaction pretty good. Folks feel pretty good about being a Rotarian, pretty good about their time being spent here, and that's what we want, trying to move those numbers forward. Again, the program committee works very hard to find a diversified speaker list, expanding that list constantly and constantly looking for feedback as well. So since these moved to the Fraser, you can see that generally speaking, our response rate on the survey has gone up a little bit. Our score on the catering has also gone up pretty significantly. In fact, our dissatisfaction rate went from 80% to 20%. So that's a pretty significant improvement in catering. So folks at Masterson's, thank you very much. And a lot of feedback about improving vegetarian options, so we'll keep looking at that as well. Speaker performance and overall satisfaction really remaining overall pretty flat in that as well. So the bottom line is most of y'all like being here, and that's great because it keeps us coming back. I want to encourage everyone that when you get the survey, please take the survey. Your feedback is important. It does get looked at, and we need that information. And if you have suggestions about program ideas upcoming, we're still building out the schedule for part of next year. Please contact Ken Gross or myself or another member of the program committee. We'd love to have your feedback and interest as well. If you have any questions, I'll be in the back teaching how to tie sheepshanks.
Here is Tom Crimmins, president of Franet, multiple Paul Harris Fellow, founding member of the 1912 Society, and chair of our Rotary Promise Scholarship Committee. Tom?
Thank you, Tony. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. As we wind up what I understand has informally been dubbed Education Month at Rotary, how appropriate that our final speaker would be the acting president of Jefferson County Public Schools, a role that he assumed on July 2nd of this year. Dr. Pollio has spent most of his professional career with the JCPS system, starting as a teacher at Shawnee High School, and later as teacher and assistant principal at Wagner High School. He's held two principal positions in the school system. First at the Jeffersontown High School, and then wrapping up at Doss, and earned a reputation for turning around struggling schools. Many of us, well, his work as a principal in the school system is particularly important to our club as we work with him and his team in the ongoing implementation of the Rotary Promise Scholarship program. Many of us got a first opportunity to meet Marty and his wife Jessica when they attended our Synergy event in August of this year. Thank you for being there. So it was good to meet him at that location at the South Central Regional Library. And later that month, we met with him for our annual review of the Rotary Promise Scholarship program with his staff. He comes to us with a diverse educational background, receiving his bachelor's degree at Indiana University, Bloomington, his master's degree in education at Eastern Kentucky University, and wrapping up with a doctorate degree right here at the University of Louisville. He and his wife are parents of one daughter who is a student in the JCPS system, and in his spare time, though it's hard to believe he would have much of it, he enjoys running. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Marty Pollio.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here today. I know there's a PowerPoint. Grab that. I have no idea what's on this PowerPoint. Communication made it for me, so I'm going to have to, I really don't do much of this PowerPoint. It looks awful boring. Really doesn't look like a very good speech there, does it? Look at this. Challenges to address. So how about we talk just a little bit more? I'll leave it there until I feel like we need to do something different. So Please don't tell Allison Martin that I said that. I think she made it. So we'll tell her we used it a lot. She probably worked on that. So I have my phone. If I look down, I'm checking the time. I'm not used to having 15 or 20 minutes only. So usually I've had this where I come to something and we laugh at Kristen here, who puts on events, and as a principal she would always tell me when I would go speak, you know, you have 5 minutes and 5 minutes, and I can get a little long-winded, but that's all you have is 5 minutes. All right, I got 5 minutes. She tried to do that with me at a recent event when I first started, and she said, you have 5 minutes, and I said, I'll take as long as I want, thank you very much. So, but I will stay time and give you the opportunity to ask questions. I'm honored to be here. This is a surprise for me completely because I feel as a school guy, and I take pride in saying I'm a school guy. I know we got another one back there. Dr. Meyer is a school guy. We've been in schools our whole career. Right now, I should be in the hallways of a high school telling kids to get to 6-period class. Lunch is over. Let's go. Hustle up. Time to get to class, and going into classrooms and making sure all those things are happening that high school principals do. Principals are, you know, the heartbeat of this this entire district, and so I feel honored to be here, and it's been special for me over the past just about 4 months that I've been doing this. And first of all, I want to thank again our board members for giving me this opportunity. To my knowledge, and maybe Ms. Haddad might correct me on this, but to my knowledge, the last principal in JCPS who became a superintendent was Richard Van Hoos. And Richard Van Hoos was the superintendent in JCPS, and our central office building is now named after him, from 1950 to 1974. He was the principal at Valley High School. So one thing I can assure you of, I don't know a lot right now about my future. One thing I can promise you, I will not be superintendent for 24 years. Does not matter what happens to the pension system. That will not happen. But it's a different day and age when somebody was superintendent for 24 years. But that was the last time in this community that a principal became the superintendent. So what a leap of faith it was for our board to give me this opportunity and do this, being a principal who now steps out and is not in the hallway getting kids to class, but is standing in front of all of you right now talking about this district. One of the things I've said many times over the past month or two, and I've come to realize it more than ever before, I believe that the next 24 months are the most important 24 months for our school district, Jefferson County Public Schools, since probably the mid-70s. So the challenges that we face, the opportunities that we face, we have some threats on the horizon. We have things that will be happening in the next few months that are extremely important. We have a superintendent search. Obviously, leadership of this district will be decided in the next 3 or 4 months. We have an audit coming out from the Kentucky Department of Education. We are consistently working on compliance and the things that we need to know. Yeah, they're not the way that are inspirational to schools, but we have to make a commitment to do things right in all of our schools and make sure we follow statutes and laws and policies, and we're going to do that. We have charter schools, which is a new thing for our state, and so whether that's next fall or the fall after, we'll be getting applications soon, and what impact will that have on our community? And that's a big challenge to come. We have student assignment and facility needs that are very stark, that we have about $1 billion worth of facility needs. They intertwine with student assignment. I have realized clearly that our community right now is very divided on the answers to things like student assignment and facilities. And so between all of this, we have to navigate the way forward. And so sometimes, obviously, that's something that's, as you can imagine, someone who was a principal, and principal is a huge job. But here I am now taking on these challenges as acting superintendent. So many times in the evening, I lay in bed and say, how in the world did I get here? And so you heard a little bit about my background, but I did want to briefly talk about how I got here. I won't make it too long, but I think it's important to see that. And I grew up, my father, actually I was born in Jefferson County. My dad was a basketball coach at Manual High School, 1968 to 71. And so both my mother and father have worked in Jefferson County. Actually, that was not Jefferson County Public Schools at the time. My mother taught for 20 years in JCPS, so both educators. But we moved around a lot when I was a kid because my dad was a basketball coach, became a college basketball coach. So a couple stops in Virginia, Owensboro, Kentucky, back to Virginia for high school. I was dying to be a college basketball player. That's what I wanted to be. But at that age especially, 5'5" and 120 pounds with a marginal jump shot is not a good recipe to be a college basketball player. And so believe it or not, no one took a gamble on me to play for their team. But I wanted to coach. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a college basketball coach. And my dad is, some of you might know him, he still was assistant AD at U of L for many years, still in the community, but he was a tough, hard-nosed coach. Learned a lot from him, but tough, hard-nosed coach. And after 18 years, and I'm gonna go learn to be a coach, I decided, and my dad decided, all right, I can't play, so I'll go be a student manager for somebody and learn to coach. And so we took the top 12 coaches in America in 1989, about 88 when we started doing this, and we'll write letters to them and ask to be a student manager. So after 18 years of this tough, hard-nosed, mean, old school father, I decided to go warm and fuzzy and became a student manager for Bobby Knight. I think back, like, what in the world must I have been thinking to do something like that? Everything you hear about it is true. Everything. Everything you hear, and probably worse. So that is where I got thick skin. So I think more than anything, that prepared me for this position, to step into this position and do this work right here. So who would have thought it at the time? But I left and got a college basketball coaching job, assistant coach at EKU. You can't major in coaching, so I got this teaching certification at IU, didn't think I'd use it. Went to EKU and was assistant coach for 4 years, thought I was well on my way until one day I was teaching class. You have to do that back then. Back in those days, it wasn't the high-paid assistant coaches they are now. And I was teaching a freshman class, and I look over at the door, and the head coach is standing outside the door, and he's waves me, and what is he doing? Because this was across campus, and I walk out in the hallway, and he said, I just wanted to let you know the president just fired me. And I said, okay, what does that mean for me? And he said, well, you're probably fired too. And so that was a hallmark moment for me, and obviously, and I walk out of there, and I decide shortly thereafter, I don't want to be a college. I don't want to beg kids to come play for me, 16, 17, 18 years old. I love the teaching part of it, and I want to coach. I just want to coach and teach. And I wanted to come to Louisville. My family had relocated back here, and I didn't want to be in a small town. And there was one job open, and it was Shawnee High School, about 30 blocks west of right where we are now. No one wanted it. There were 9 players on the team at the time. They had won 2 games the year before. And I said, I'll take the job and go down there, and it would be a great story, wouldn't it, if I could tell you we won the state championship that year? We didn't. We didn't win the state championship. But I went in and I found these 9 kids, and you know what? They wanted to be coached just as much as the guys that play for U of L or UK. They wanted high expectations. They wanted someone that was going to teach them the game. And we got in there and rolled up our sleeves. I got a couple of assistant coaches who were making $700 or $800. We went in the, at the end of the first practice, I saw them all starting to walk home. I'm like, where are you? Well, are we going to walk home? I said, no, you're not. Pile about 8 kids in my Honda Civic at the time, probably violated board policies. And we drove them home every night after practice. And these guys just wanted to be coached. And it was the most meaningful season of my career. At the end of that time, I think we won 14 games that year. We went like 14-14. And so You know, I look back at that, and it paved the way for what I believe we should be doing with kids at all times, which is no matter what challenges they have. And none of these kids, you know, Saturday morning practice, I had to go bang on their door. They wouldn't come on, wake up, we're going to practice. We have to do those type of things. But I knew I didn't want to coach for the rest of my career. And I was fortunate enough after I'd moved to Wagner, as we all probably have in our careers, to be tapped on the shoulder by someone to say, you need to be a principal. That's what you'd be great at. Jim Jury, who's now the principal at Mayo High School, he was the one that tapped me on the shoulder and said, you would be a great principal. And so I went back to school, got my leadership certification, and found a passion for doing that. Found a passion for doing that. Went to, got the job at J-Town for 8 years. For 2 years then moved over to Doss High School, where I learned a lot in both of those stops. A couple things that I have found so important in my career. Passion is the key to everything. I don't believe that we can be successful in anything in life unless you have a passion for it. In my short time in this job, I have seen one of the few things, I mean, I know for sure, we have 16,000 employees in JCPS and 6,000 teachers in JCPS. And yeah, we've got issues we have to deal with, and we have to get better, and we are doing that every single day. But we have people that are passionate about kids and passionate about their schools and want to have a great school system. And so that motivates me every day to do this. And it is the reason why last spring, when I was in the office at Doss High School, and I like being in the hallways in the classroom, not sitting in an office. And I'm trying to get out in the hallway, and my secretary says, Dr. Pollio, you have a phone call. And I said, Mary Ann, I got to take a message. And she says, it's Frank Mellon, General Counsel. And when you are a principal and General Counsel calls, that's usually not a good phone call. It's usually bad news. And so I walk back and I take the call, and he says, are you interested in the acting superintendent position? And I was kind of speechless because I was doing what everybody else was doing. I wonder who's going to get this job, who's going to be, you know, names and talking. And I said, well, you know, let me think about it. It was Derby week. I remember Wednesday of Derby week. I'm just trying to pick the winner of the race. And I go home that night, and I lay in bed most of the night wide awake, you know, not sure, am I going to do this job? And then I finally came to the conclusion about the middle of the night that evening that I've got a passion for JCPS. I've been doing this for 21 years in JCPS. It's my 21st year, 2 decades. And we need some change. We need morale and climate and culture positive. We have so many great people in this district. Someone needs to lead us through this 24 months. And so why not me? So I woke up the next morning and called him back and said, I'll interview for it. And fortunate was given the opportunity to do this. And so that's kind of how I ended in this position right here today. I think in the 4 months, we've made some big strides in moving our organization forward. We've got a long way to go. We really do. And this is where let's see, time check here. So I'll tell you this right here. One of the great things about Coach Knight, working for Coach Knight, I learned this as a leader, and I've done it my entire career. The way he coached was, we're not going to try to fool you. We're not going to try to trick you. We're going to do the same thing every game. As a matter of fact, we're telling you we'll let you know what we're going to do. We're going to practice it every day. We're going to drill it every day. It's going to be very simple, but we are going to be great at it, and we'll just be better than you. And we're going to do these 3 or 4 things. And so every stop from that point forward, as a coach, a principal, an acting superintendent, I've decided that philosophy I'm going to take with me, which is we're going to identify what we're going to be good at or improve at. We're going to work it every single day. We're going to message it. Everyone's going to talk about it. And so I think that is so important that too often in organizations, we try to do a whole lot of things well, and we do them all marginally well or poorly. And so I think that's one of the areas that we've had to improve on in JCPS is figuring out who we are, what we're going to be great at, drill it every single day, and get better at it every single day. And so quickly, these are kind of my wordings, but fortunately they lined up exactly with what our board decided in Vision 2020. We're going to do 3 things well. We're going to improve the climate and culture in our schools, because right now we have toxic culture, and I believe culture is the most important thing for school success or team success. And let me define that quickly for you. Culture is the attitudes and beliefs that the adults in a school bring to that school every single day and how it impacts student learning. It has nothing to do with students. And so I ask people all the time, we hear in this city mostly, that's a good school, that's not a good school. And I ask people, suspend your beliefs on that. Because I've been in schools that are classified as not very good schools, and they have the best culture you could ever believe, because it's what the attitudes and attitudes and beliefs that adults bring to that school, and overcoming these immense challenges that the student population brings to plow forward and make great strides. I'll tell you this, Fern Creek High School is an example of that. The attitudes and beliefs, we are going to teach every single kid no matter what they bring, and we're going to make it successful. That is what culture is, and I believe that's on any team. We have to have positive culture. Climate is what happens in the classroom, the hallways every day. We have to have healthy, positive academic learning climates. We're committed to that. Secondly, improving student learning. Obviously, we want to do that. But I didn't say achievement, I said learning. I'm such a believer in getting kids engaged. You walk into the class, they don't have that teenage look on, you know, that look, all of you all that have teenagers, like they don't care, that like I don't care look. Like getting rid of that look and getting kids engaged in what they do. We call that deeper learning and authentic learning. And then finally, organizational coherence. We have 155 schools. We are not going to be McDonald's or Starbucks, where you go to the McDonald's here in Louisville, Kentucky, and the one in Nashville, Tennessee, the menu's the same, they cook the same, it tastes the same. We're not going to have 155 schools like that. Each school has its own culture, and the principal and the leadership team and the teachers define what that culture is. But we have to have principles that we focus on and believe in, and that we fund as a district, and we have oversight, and we make sure we are successful at doing those. So every single day, the past 4 months, I've worked with staff, with schools, with principals, with cabinet, with board members to make sure we keep our eye on these things. We're going to continue to get better at those. Let's see what else we got on here. It's boring. You all know, I tried to communicate. I've got a great communications team, stand in front, answer questions. My wife is tired of seeing my face on the news and the media, so she says it's ridiculous. So I've told you about some of these challenges that we have to address. I will be happy to answer any questions about those as we move forward. Some opportunities that are, you can see, I won't get into these, but I did want to highlight briefly Louisville Promise. I think it is a great opportunity for us to move forward. I talked about the Academies of Louisville today, which is what we do with our high schools, wall-to-wall academy model. Louisville Promise is an opportunity for every single one of JCPS students still in the works and tinkering with Metro government, United Way, other organizations, foundations, to have every single kid graduating from JCPS with a guaranteed 2-year scholarship, plus wraparound services along the way. So got a lot of hope and faith that that's going to be a great opportunity for us. So as I conclude and take any questions that you might have, I want to say once again, I'm honored and privileged to be standing here representing this district and this community. I will say this as I finish. People ask me about charter schools and some of the initiatives coming up. No matter what happens with that, let's even say 5,000 students, and that's a very aggressive number, go to charter schools. That means we still have 96,000 that are Jefferson County public school students. That includes mostly will be 62,000 kids that come from what are considered poor, free or reduced lunch. 62,000, 13,000 special ed kids, 6,000 homeless children, 6,000 English second language students. So you can imagine the success of this community and this city depends on Jefferson County Public Schools. And I'm honored and privileged to be leading it for however long that might be. Thank you. Sure. Have at it.
First of all, thank you for raising the average speaker's presentation scores. That was outstanding. It was exhilarating. I know it is 12 o'clock. For those that have to leave for appointments, please do. But Dr. Pollio has graciously given us an extra 10 or 15 minutes if there are any questions. Just an observation as an educator who speaks with other educators. When folks speak of your leadership, two words come up that I hear over and over again: optimism and enthusiasm.
Thank you.
Would you like to comment on the importance of being both as you're leading schools and cultures and such?
Well, I believe that we are in a people business and a child business. And so I've said, I call it passion, but it's energy too. If you don't have passion and energy in this business, you're in the wrong business. And all too often in schools across America, but it's happened in Jefferson County Public Schools, everybody comes so fired up for the first day. It's going to be great, great year. By Labor Day, well, how long do we have left in the school year? And no matter what the challenges, no matter what they are, and the optimism, I use a term, I've used it in schools often, when we say, well, parents don't get involved, or not the way it used to be, or we don't have the funding we need, or kids don't come to us prepared. I use a term called TBU, true but useless. All right, doesn't matter. Only thing we can control is what we come with every single day to school, which is energy and passion. And that gets to culture. If we do not have that, we will not be successful.
Roland.
Thank you for coming to speak to us today. My name is Roland Blahnik. I'm President Emeritus of Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. I have a much less complex question than leadership. What's the average GPA of a graduating senior in Jefferson County, and has that been going up or down over the last 10 years?
It's one I haven't gotten before, so I don't have that data on me. The average GPA, I wouldn't know what that is. I apologize. What I can tell you is graduation rate has increased regularly over the past decade, to the point where JCPS, we're in the high 80s when it comes to graduation rate. So, you know, that is a positive. Where my focus is with the academies of Louisville is increasing the amount of students who leave with a diploma plus. It's not enough anymore for our kids to walk out the door with just a diploma. They must have a diploma plus a certification or dual credit to college or an apprenticeship. And that's a job opportunity while they're in school. So I have a commitment that it's going to be in one of the pathways that are career that we need in this community. We have so many pathways, careers where people are clamoring, we need workers. IT is an example, the medical profession, manufacturing, teaching. So we have to make sure that we prepare our kids to step right into those jobs in order to be successful.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Pollio. And I know I'm not supposed to say a statement, but boy, I hope the school search ends here. You'd make an awesome permanent superintendent.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
With the dual credit, we do know from the Rotary Promise Scholarship that that is one of the key predictors of persistence in our students staying with their program. How can we get more equitable distribution of those opportunities? I know my children went to Manual. They had dozens to pick from. Many schools don't seem to have much opportunity. How do we get that equity issue addressed?
It's an extremely important issue right now because most of our dual credit opportunities historically have been centered in certain schools, certain areas of town. And we have to, first of all, increase our equity in gifted and talented and AP programs, or whatever iteration we have in each school. That could be IB. There's all kinds of various programs that identify gifted and talented. But it is not equitable at this time, and we have to continue to work to make sure that we identify kids, alert parents, and not put roadblocks in the way of getting kids equitable access to those programs. But one of the things I found at Doss High School, for instance, that is a block to dual credit, especially if it's off campus. So we have JCTC Southwest within about 5 miles of the Doss campus. We probably only had 15 kids who drove a car to school as a senior, where if you go to an East End school, there's hundreds of cars in the parking lot. I've often said jokingly, we could save a lot of money. We could actually have our assessment of schools and rank them based upon the amount of cars in the student parking lot for high schools. But with only 14, my goal has been always, as seniors, let's let them take their math, English, and science class in the morning and then leave and go to a job or go to dual credit. But there's only so many opportunities for kids to go get in a car and drive there, and their parents are not able to come pick them up. So we have to do creative things like bring the college professors to the schools. We have to, which we are doing in the second semester, which is having a bus drive around to various schools in Southwest Louisville, pick up kids, and take them to our Southwest campus. And increase those opportunities, align dual credit with not just English and math, but how about things like IT classes, coding, welding, the health fields. All of those can be dual credits that we expand, but we've got to find ways to transport them there.
Thank you, Dr. Pollio. Ken Grossman, Executive Image Custom Clothiers. I too am a product of the JCPS. I went to Ballard High School, and then I was at Indiana University in 1976. You know what happened that year?
Great year to be there.
Perfect season. I was not involved with the basketball team. But it's great to hear somebody say something good about Coach Knight for a change.
I could tell you some stories, though.
One of my friends was a manager, and I heard a lot of those stories. Here's my question. My two boys, one of them went to Male and the other went to Manual. And when I was at Ballard in the 70s, it was an incredible school. The advanced program and the teachers we had there, we all benefited from them. So actually, it's a two-part question. One is magnet schools. What's your thoughts on them? What's the future? And the other is student assignment. Seems like we spend a lot of time moving kids from one side of the city to the other, and it's expensive. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on those two parts of JCPS.
Those two questions go hand in hand. So obviously, our district and our board, which I support, is very supportive of choice and a viable magnet program. Often, though, we say about moving kids around the district only pertains to one type of kid, that is the complaint about moving them around. We don't hear necessarily the same type of complaint when it's moving kids on a bus to one of our magnet opportunities. So we have to look at that both ways. I think our community is pretty committed to making sure we have viable magnet opportunities and parent choice for schools. So we have about 92% of our elementary school kids, their parents get their first choice, and about half of the time that's not a reside school. They're their neighborhood school, so to speak. So these are difficult issues. I believe our board is committed to choice, but to also make sure that we reduce travel time as much as possible. We have our Chief Operation Officer here, Mike Razor, and I mean, we talk often about the challenges of bus drivers and getting kids everywhere that we want to go. So I know our board is committed to making sure that we reduce travel time as much as possible. What I believe about student assignment more than anything is it's a local issue, that our community needs to come together and make decisions about student assignment. I believe it's always been a local issue, and it should be a local issue. We actually have a meeting today of a committee on student assignment excuse me, that will probably be a 12 to 18-month process, but it is a significant review of student assignment. We are going to have open community conversations that we need to hear from the community what the community wants in a new student assignment plan. The challenge with that is this community is extremely divided on that issue, and I found that in my short time on this. But we are going to have to find a way that we think is best for our community, and our school board obviously having some tenets that they believe in, things like choice, diversity, while all of us still, the last thing anyone wants, I know, our board members, is kids on a bus. I will tell you this, the average travel time for an elementary school student in our district on a bus right now is 25 minutes. We spend less money per student on transportation than Fayette County does. No one will say that, but we do. And many districts, and it's right at the average for districts across this state.
And with our final question, Walt.
Great, thank you. Dr. Pollio, Walt Kuno. I've been working with kids at Iroquois and Western for 7 years now. And first thing I want to say, and I am going to talk about this, Michael Newman at Western is just one of your rock stars. He has made such a difference. Yep. And as Rotarians, we're going to mentor about 100 kids this year, and we're going to have hopefully more than 60 Rotarians participate in this. You wrote a letter to our mentees, the students, and I would like to read the whole thing. We don't have time, but I want to point out two things. You said this twice. Your best future self, addressing our students. And that was so important. Our kids, your kids, our kids read this, and you tell them your best future self. So my question to you is, what can we do as Rotarians, not only to mentor, that's great, but we have all different kinds of people here that have different talents, but you've got 300 people here that can make a difference in these young people's lives, which in turn makes a difference in Louisville. What are some things that you can direct us to do to help you out?
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to commend you on those efforts, because we have to get away from, in this nation, believing that education is just the school district's responsibility. It is an entire community's responsibility, and the most successful urban areas are ones that the entire community gets involved and says, we're all in this together for the future of our city, community, and you all have clearly taken that on with mentoring and scholarships in two of our most challenging schools by far, Western and Iroquois, nearly 100% poverty, high levels of need out of students from ESL to special ed. So the need, I've seen it, and I will tell you this, as a principal, there were very few days when I went to Doss High School where my heart wasn't broken by what a kid brings to school. And I look back and think, I don't know if I would have made it with what some of our kids face in this community. Louisville, Kentucky in 2017, we should not have these things, our kids coming to school with these types of issues. So that's a community-wide. Yes, we take responsibility for what we do, but without a doubt, the community must jump in. Mentoring, scholarships are fantastic. I would encourage another avenue that is so important for us is through the academies of Louisville. We need kids that get to partner with businesses in one of our pathways. And so a high school student, we need, at their freshman year, taking field trips to businesses, as in the pathways at their school, as sophomores, job shadowing in that field, as juniors and seniors, in the mayor's summer works program, actually doing the work, an apprenticeship as a senior. And so those opportunities to get kids out of the school where we all know as seniors, remember those, you did the first 3 or 4 periods, and then the rest of the day you found an elective and maybe aided for a teacher, and that's gone on for all these years. I remember when I was in school. Let's forget that. Let's get them into dual credit or get them an apprenticeship, where that's where real powerful mentoring goes on. Kids doing a job, they're working hard. The company has them either job shadowing or learning the experience of the field. And then when they walk across the stage, you can be there with them to say, here's a job for you. You can, we want to employ you in this field. And by the way, we're going to help you get to college too. And we have a scholarship for you to do that. So such powerful opportunities to truly mentor someone when it is in a work setting.
Dr. Marty Pollio, our superintendent of Jefferson County Public Schools. And again, guests, we had so many distinguished guests today. Thank you for joining us. The Rotary Club of Louisville, this meeting is